Good morning and welcome to another bearing installation video featuring Boca bearings. Today I'm going to be installing a set of high-performance Boca bearings into my own Saito FA-120 4-stroke engine. I'm going to take you to the table, show you the tools I'm going to use, and I'm also going to talk about a peculiarity I found with the rear bearing that came out of this extremely low-time engine. Okay, so here on the table I've got all the items I'm going to need for this installation. I've got my set of high-performance Boca bearings, and this kit number, which will also be listed in the video description, is ENK-083HP. So this is the high-performance bearing kit. I've also got my cleaned Saito FA-120 crankcase here, my crankshaft, and piece of wood to tap the bearings in, ball peen hammer. I've got a little socket extension here to use as a drive for the crankshaft. I've got a bottle of Lightning Lube Road Power here to lubricate the outside of the bearings and the inside of the bearing mating surfaces. I've got my desk vise off to the side here. I've got my heat gun and my protective glove to protect my hands from the heat. So let me zoom in here a bit real quick and talk about this rear bearing. So this engine was an engine that I got in a Facebook marketplace deal. It was just one of many things that I got, and it was an extremely low time engine. In fact, the top of the piston had next to no buildup on it at all. So, and the engine rotated freely. It seemed fine to me. And so here's the front bearing, and it looks like a typical front bearing from Saito. It's, it's in good condition still, I would say, because like I said, I don't think this thing had more than maybe 4 or 5 runs on it, tops. But then I went to pull this rear bearing out, and you're like, well, this looks like just a typical rear bearing, and it does. It's a Japanese, I think it's an NTN bearing, but I've never seen one like this before. And when I say that, I mean it is locked up. The inner race doesn't move at all. So when I was rotating this thing through on the bench and just thinking it was a low time engine, what was actually happening was the crankshaft was actually spinning within that inner race, and the bearing wasn't doing any work at all, which I thought was really peculiar because I've changed bearings in a lot of engines and I've yet to ever come across something like that that seems to be a fairly new bearing, and it's just completely locked up. Now, I did not take any time to put this in the ultrasonic cleaner, lube it, heat it, or determine anything about why it's like that, but it is. So that's what I've got here to do for the bearing installation. That's what I wanted to tell you about, this peculiarity of this bearing. So I'm going to put those things aside, and we're going to get straight to installing the bearings in this engine. Okay, so here I've got the bearings out of the main package, and this is the first time I've ever actually opened these up to see what they're like. This main rear bearing is an open shield on one side, and it just has a looks like a phenolic or a plastic retainer on the inside. And look at these things, just absolutely smooth as silk, just beautiful. This bearing, front bearing, is provided as a fully sealed rubber sealed bearing on both sides, which is exactly what the old Saito one was. So I'm going to just leave that as it is. I'm not going to make any modifications to these bearings whatsoever. That's unnecessary. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little squirt of lightning lube in this container here, and using just a little bit of a pipette here, I'm just going to put some oil on the outside of each of these bearings. They don't need any oil on the inside. And I'm going to put a little bit on the crankshaft here where the bearings are going to go. It's always good to lubricate all of these items up anyway. This was just cleaned yesterday and I really didn't get a chance to do my normal coating of oil on this engine. I usually put a generous coating of oil on all of the engines I've taken out of the ultrasonic cleaner, but I didn't really get it done for this one. So with that done, now we're ready to install the bearings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift over here, and I am going to gently heat this crankcase up and expand this aluminum just a little bit so the bearing will go in a lot easier. Set my bearing in the opening there. And using my piece of wood and my ball peen hammer, I'm just going to tap it in place. And maybe it could have used a little bit more heat. Okay, that's in there. Let's see. Feels wonderful. So let's set that aside. Now on this, I can take that off for a second. I'm going to put this plastic race facing out so that the rear of the bearing is open. And you can see, as compared to that other one, I think you can see how this thing just, and you can see actually the bearing itself is rotating as it should. So let me throw my glove back on here real quick, heat this crankcase up a little bit more in the middle, and we'll put this crankshaft in and rear bearing. Now I always put the bearing on the crankshaft itself because I just think it's a lot easier to do, a lot safer. And the front bearing being installed first provides a guiding mechanism to keep it straight as opposed to just putting a bearing in there by itself. So I like this method. Should be enough. Now we're just gonna drive this down into place. Oh wow, I didn't have to really tap that much at all. And there we go. Fully installed. That's exactly what it should look like too. That counterweight should just drop to the bottom very easily like that. So there you have it. That's the installation of a set of high-performance Boca bearings into my Saito FA-120 engine, and now I can complete the reassembly of this engine.